This is Patricia Posner, who's a researcher and an author, but told me that she'd rather be a researcher than an author. But this time you're an author, so we have to treat you like an author. First of all, before we get into your book, which is called
Pharmacists of Auschwitz.
I didn't realize till a couple of years ago when I interviewed your husband, Gerald Posner, that you were really a team, and that it wasn't just Gerald as a writer and you're a writer, but you worked together.
The first book was Mengele, The Complete Story, and that's when it really started from there on. And it just was a natural flow for both of us. We work very well together. So he does the editing on my books, I do the editing on his books, we do the research together. We're also very good that we can take constructive criticism, which is very important when you're a married couple, right? Because that could cause problems.
Oh yeah, big time.
And we know how to strengthen our weaknesses. So his editing is wonderful. That's not my strength. Mine is the research, the writing, getting into the archives with the boxes, putting those little white gloves on, finding all the little tidbits.
What happens when you find something, some small little tidbit, and you follow it through and it opens up into this treasure trove of information regarding something completely different that you didn't even think you would go to? How?
If you're lucky enough, and that does happen, that can put you into your next book project. That would be great.
So that's a great feeling.
Yeah, it is great. And it has happened to us. My book is an offshoot from the Mengele book, because the Pharmacists of Auschwitz worked with Joseph Mengele, the Angel of Death, in Auschwitz. So that was my luck.
How did you and Gerald meet?
We met on a blind date in New York in 1980. I had arrived in New York in 1978, and he came to pick me up for lunch, and we didn't click. We didn't like each other. So lunch was off. And then we kept on bumping into each other at like social events. He would be there, and then we would sit and talk, and we were so different, because he's very cerebral, and I was into fashion. He was a lawyer at the time with Cravath, Swaine & Moore, and he just left. And so we just found that there was a real connection there. We really liked each other. And people kept on saying, oh, don't you fancy each other? And I say, no, it's not like that. We're just friends. And it developed over time. We're very different, but we're very much the same.
How are you different?
Well, he comes from a very cerebral background. He went to college, he graduated to be a lawyer. I left school at 16, I went into fashion. I'm British, he's American. I'm Jewish, he's Catholic. But it never, ever, ever was an issue or a problem for us, ever. I got on very well with his family, he got on very well with my family, so we've always been very lucky.
You were once in the fashion business?
Yes, I started out in the fashion industry. All my family in London. We were all in London, England. Most of them were in the fashion industry, either embroidery, milliners, dressmakers. And because I left school at 16 and I'm dyslexic, it was I was very visual. And it was so easy for me to understand what went together, what wasn't right, how it just was so that was a natural.
So how did you segue from that into becoming a writer?
Well, that's interesting. There's been many incarnations of Patricia, believe me.
Share a few with us.
Well, I moved to Spain. I went into the hotel business, went into the hairdresser's business. When I moved to New York in 1978, I went into the fashion business, went into the music industry. And I think what happened was I was working so much with Gerald on his books that it was just a natural offshoot. And the reason my first book was This Is Not Your Mother's Menopause, put out by Vallard.
That's a great title.
Yeah. And
what was it about?
It was about, well, I had gone to the doctor, and my doctor told me I was like, in menopause, I was out there. And I was like so surprised. I knew nothing about it. I was really pretty ignorant, although I'm good with health issues because my mother had so many health issues. And Gerald said to me, well, why don't you just research it, do what you do best? And once I researched it, I realized there wasn't a lot of information out there. And when you went into, that time, Barnes & Nobles, when we did have bookstores.
I remember them.
Those, it was under disease. And I would say to Gerald, why have they got menopause under a disease? It's just a natural flow.
Because there was probably a man managing the store and he said that's where it belonged.
Yes. So I did a proposal for it, and we were at the time in Paris doing Lady Di story, which is, for, I think it was for Tina Brown Talk magazine, was it? I'm not sure, 100%. And they refused it. They turned it down. So I redid the proposal and they accepted it. And that was my first introduction to writing. The premise of my book was no hormones, was no HRT, because there was breast cancer in my family. And they were very apprehensive for that because of drug companies.
Sure.
Yeah. And then the Women's Health Initiative came out and said I was right. So there was a follow-up called No Hormones, No Fear. So that was how I got into writing. But the hard part was, now, how do I get into writing a book that is not women's health, that is not about cultural issues? Because I was writing for Ocean Drive at the time. I was doing Health Watch and cultural things like let's build Home Depot stores here or whatever. And that was what I was doing. Yeah, it was very deep.
Isn't it amazing how things end up they start way over here and you don't see it, and then before you know it, it's suddenly in another place, and you're saying, this is where it's supposed to be.
Well, the interesting part with this, I'd had this book idea in my head for 31 years after I met Joseph Mengele, Angel of Death, son, Rolf Mengele. So this book, Pharmacist of Auschwitz, had been there, but they was trying to find a way to get it out there, and I got very lucky.
What, just going off the subject, because we're talking about Mengele and his son, and he was such a infamous, vile character. What was the son like?
It was very interesting with the son. I was very apprehensive to meet him. He wanted to meet me. And, being brought up in a conservative Jewish background, not buying anything German, the whole drama, I kept on thinking the whole time, oh my God, what would my mother think if I met with him? It was like, it was really clawing at me. And when I did meet him, he was as nervous as I was. I'm sure, did he have the DNA of his father? Should he have given his father in sooner? Because he knew where he was the whole time. We were very uncomfortable in the beginning, but eventually he started to relax. But still, I met Rudolf Hess's son as well. So, Joe's taken me on quite journeys, these journeys, when he did Hitler's Children. So we've been on a few journeys to meet some characters.
Well, are the children anything like the parents, or are they aware of what really happened and feel some sort of remorse?
Some of them are just vehement Nazis, like Rudolf Hess's son was. He hated the Brits, hated the Jews, hated Churchill. But still, when he met me, he picked me up in New York and gave me a bear hug. It was so bizarre. And others, yes. Others, the sins of their fathers they felt bad about.
The book is called
The Pharmacist of Auschwitz.
And give us your quick elevator pitch about what the book is about.
It's about Victor Capesius, who was an ordinary man. He worked for Bayer, which was part of IG Farben, and he got taken into the SS, into Auschwitz, which he didn't want. He was reluctant. That was but prior to that, he was in Dachau, and because it wasn't a desired place to go to for anyone. And the pharmacist before him was executed for defeatism. Yes, for defeatism, I know, hard to imagine. And here is an ordinary man that went from being a pharmacist and also knowing a lot of the people, because the people in his region used to get stuff from him, from going to the ramps to take medical equipment and medicine, and then becoming a greedy thief, stealing jewelry, belongings, stealing the gold from the teeth that was pulled from the corpses, storing the Cyclone B, which was the odorless gas that went into the gas chambers, and then going to the rails to do the selections for life and death. And it just shows what happens to someone. There were 7,000 people there, and he's just one of 7,000. And how, I don't want to tell you how he's escaping everything, because you got read the book.
Buy the book,
and then read it.
But it's really a good story. And I think it'll be an easy read. You take it to the beach, and it's just wonderful.
It's an easy read. It's a very strange thing to say because everybody's told me that, but it's a hard read.
Yeah, well, the story is hard to accept.
A couple of times with it.
Anyway, this has been really good, and I always enjoy talking to you. And I'm always sorry when we're reaching the end, but I've run out of questions.
But thank you for making it so easy for me. It was wonderful. Thank you.